It was actually the students. We preach, you see something, say something, and they did just that. They seen the individual putting on tactical vests, gloves, masks, and we was patrolling as normal. We patrol the campus, keep our students safe, and they flagged me down and acknowledged that they seen what they seen, and at that, we go right into action. And for you to have on a tactical vest, gloves, and a mask, the question raised, what are you doing here? So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was safe and that I got the license plate to where, anything came above or came about, then I could provide that.
Lieutenant Bailey then got into his own public safety vehicle and pursued the individual by car in the attempt to identify the individual and or retrieve the license plate number of the vehicle being driven by the non-authorized campus intruder. Lieutenant Bailey continued his pursuit of the individual around a block of the university campus until the individual left the immediate vicinity of the institution, at which time Lieutenant Bailey then flagged down a uniformed Jacksonville Sheriff's Office officer in his vehicle as the JSO officer was exiting the JSO substation precinct that sits on and is a part of the EWU campus. At that point, Lieutenant Bailey gave a full description to the JSO officer of the unauthorized campus intruder as a white male who was wearing gloves and what appeared to be a tactical armored vest and who fled the EWU campus at a high rate of speed.
President Faison said multiple times on occasions here today that I'm a hero. It was the act of the students that came forth as to why I was able to do what I did today. I'm no hero. This is a daily activity that we do on a daily basis to protect our students. They explained to me what they saw, what occurred, and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do my job. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I just knew that we had somebody on campus that shouldn't be. And I knew that that was around lunchtime and we had students in the Georgia and Collins. So my job is to make sure they get to and from safely. My training is, I am prior law enforcement, where I served multiple years, as well as corrections in the state of Mississippi. So I relied on that training.
He could have gone anywhere. It's not by happenstance. It's not just, on a whim that he chose to come to Florida's first historically Black college or university.
On Saturday morning, the nations observed the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. By the evening, a white gunman in Jacksonville, Florida, reportedly driven by racial animus, went on a shooting rampage at a store near Edward Waters University, a historical Black university. 3 Black Americans were murdered in cold blood. Racist violence today harkens back to the church bombings of the cross burnings. In that same town, 5 years earlier, there were another 5 young Blacks who were killed. While we gather the facts and law enforcement has opened a federal civil rights investigation to treat this as this terror as a possible hate crime, the act of domestic violent extremism, it clearly is. But we know this, as I made clear in my inaugural address, white supremacy is a poison. It's a poison. It's been allowed to grow faster and fester in our communities to the point where the intelligence community is determined, the U.S. intelligence community is determined that domestic terrorism rooted in white supremacy is the greatest terrorist threat we face in the homeland, the greatest threat. We have to act. We have to act. After the racist mass shootings in Buffalo last year, I got an opportunity to meet with every one of the family members The Lawyers Committee and other leaders helped us host a United We Stand Summit here in the East Room in the White House. We made clear that America is the most multiracial, most dynamic nation in the history of the world. All of us need to say clearly and forcefully as we can, that hate will not prevail in America. Hate will not prevail in America. But pause for just a moment. I thought things had changed. I was able to literally, not figuratively, talk Strom Thurmond into voting for the Civil Rights Act before he died. And I thought, well, maybe there's real progress. But hate never dies. It just hides. It hides under the rocks. And when someone breathes a little oxygen in, it comes out roaring out. And silence is complicity. And we're not going to remain silent.
How do you explain to her where her father is? This is what this is about. It has become accepted by many people in this country to look the other way when people are talking about people of color having no value, them being inferior, them being a dread and menace to society. Now we need leaders to be leaders to unite America, not to separate America, not to promote those things that are least common denominators. And they should all know that that killer has blood on his hands, but those who condone white supremacy rather than condemning white supremacy have blood on their hands. Those who would not champion legislation to make sure that there are background checks before people can go buy guns, who have histories of mental illness, they have blood on their hands. Those who promote hate speech on social media and the internet, they have blood on their hands. I understand this is the over 400 mass shootings this year alone in America. How many more before the leaders will step up and help solve these issues versus looking the other way? 60 years later, after Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech here in Jacksonville, Florida, we can make an example as a teachable moment, or we can be just another senseless, racist, motivated shooting spree that is swept under the rug.
He was a very devoted father. He was there every step of the way from day one when we found out I was going to be a grandmother. He didn't miss a beat. He didn't miss a doctor's appointment. Gerald worked 2 and 3 jobs to provide for his child. A father-daughter dance was coming up in February. He was so excited about it, talking about the colors they was going to wear and all. And he was robbed of that, and so was my granddaughter. Now she's asking, who shot my daddy?
60 years ago today was the March on Washington. Saturday, tens of thousands marched and stood for today's issues as they stood 60 years ago. As we were marching, there was a hate crime committed in Jacksonville. And when we got to the end of the march and heard about it, that's why we were marching. 60 years ago, 2.5 weeks after that march, there was the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. We have an eerie memory that as much hope as we represent, there's always going to be those that will keep hate alive. It was an open and very candid meeting, but we leave here determined to continue to stand together across racial lines and generations and try and make this country move forward as they stood out on the mall 60 years ago today and stood for a dream. That dream cannot be deferred by our inaction.
Today, 60 years after the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, we are at a very challenging and difficult time. This is a very difficult day for us in one sense, because you would think that America would be much further than it is. What we know, though, is that Mom and Dad and others taught us that when people come together, change can occur. We will never give in, we will never give out, we will never give up. We must work to realize the dream.
One of the things that my father said quite often is one of the tragedies still of human history is that the children of darkness are often more zealous and determined than the children of light. But I am hopeful because amongst this group and so many others, including those of the next generation, there's a force of vigilance that is determined to ensure that we create a just, humane, equitable, and peaceful world. And we are not going to tolerate hate. We're not going to tolerate violence. We're not going to tolerate poverty, which is an issue that we're still yet to deal with in this country.
So it's a crazy situation. I mean, even growing up, my mom, she had 5 kids before she passed away in 2009. And my grandmother, Cheryl Joshin and Eva Mobley, she took us all in and, they raised us all together. Cheryl Joshin, she's been there for the longest, that's my rock. She kept us all together. She made a promise to my mom that we all graduate, and she finally fulfilled that promise with AJ being the last one last year. AJ, he graduated from Range, and honestly, we got forced to move up here through COVID, and we had a little bit of family up here, but we're really from Palmetto, Florida. We moved to St. Pete for a bit, but most of our childhood was in Palmetto, and moved up here. We knew the north side of Jacksonville was a bad area, but AJ was just a guy. He just went to school, played video games. He had dreams and aspiration of being a professional streamer. So after times he'll get off work, he'll stay up till like 3, 4 in the morning just grinding, trying to get to that stance and having viewers and stuff like that. He played a lot of games, Dead by Daylight. He's good at Fortnite. He's just any game really. He didn't really like sport games, but he just liked those specific type of games. And they say don't question God, man, but I just want to know why. I just really wanted the world to know who AJ was. A low maintenance guy that just is so genuine and so pure, so just. I don't know, man. I just wish he didn't have to go out like that. He didn't even do anything wrong. I hear killings all the time about people getting killed because they're in drug transactions and different things like that, but all he was doing is just at work. He was just at work, man. So yeah, man, I don't know, man. One thing I did learn from this, though, is love on the ones who you have, because you never know when they'll leave. I always thought I knew that same with my mom being gone, taken away from me at a young age, but my brother, I never thought I have to bury my baby brother. You know, I didn't even get a chance to tell him I love him before he went. So I can't even imagine what my grandma's going through. I mean, it's hard for the family to talk. I'm just trying to be the voice because I know everybody's probably wondering, who is AJ? He didn't have a social profile. He didn't really have anything. He wasn't high into social media. He just loved playing games. He's a genuine kid and loved his family, you know, and he just wanted to be a professional streamer one day. He didn't even get a chance to live that out.
We should all be standing up and saying that any act of violence against someone purely because of the color of their skin is terrible. Yesterday in my church service, we talked about the absolute devastation of Mother Emanuel Church and how those families responded to it. But the core of that attack was a racist walking into a church and eliminating, killing 9 African Americans simply for the color of their skin. We saw 3 African Americans die because of the color of their skin over the weekend. That's devastating. We obviously released a statement, but more importantly, we released our prayers. We have to combat violence in this country, and specifically racism, when it leads to death, without any question. The question is, have humans done enough to talk about racism and discrimination that leads to violence and to death? I think that's a responsibility of every single American, the Republican Party, Democrat Party, no party affiliation. If we do our part as the American family, we'll be better off. The root of the issue is hate. You can't find a way to pass legislation that deals with hate, but you can stand up and confront it, whether it's, as I did, against the anti-Semitism on college campuses or the attacks on Jewish people in New York, or frankly talking about my personal story. Those are ways that we can bring attention to the issue, but what we have to recognize is that the American family continues to grow and to evolve in the right direction. So we should stop, attack those who are attacking our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors, obviously not physically, but attacking them by standing in the gap and being the part of that firewall. It's so important for us to do that. When we do that, I think our nation comes together. We saw that here in Charleston as a result of the Mother Emanuel Church shooting. We saw our city come together, that our state came together, and our nation came together, and we had a time of healing, of opportunity for us to reflect on the challenges that we face and the promise of our future.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, a couple things. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This Saturday, our nation marked the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, a seminal moment in our history and in our work towards equal opportunity for all Americans. Sadly, this day of remembrance ended with yet more American communities wounded by an act of gun violence, including communities in Boston, Chicago, and Joppa. At least one shooting this weekend was reportedly fueled by hate and carried out with 2 firearms. On Saturday in Jacksonville, Florida, a white gunman went on a shooting rampage at a store near historically black university and killed 3 black individuals. Even as we continue searching for answers, we must say clearly and forcefully that white supremacy has no place in America. As the president said in his statement yesterday, we must refuse to live in a country where black families going to the store or black students going to school live in fear of being gunned down because of the color of their skin. Hate must have no safe harbor. Silence is complicity, and we must not remain silent. And we must continue to do all we can to keep guns out of dangerous hands. The President and the First Lady are praying for the victims and their families, and this entire administration grieves with the people of Jacksonville. Director of the Office of Public Engagements, Stephen Benjamin, who is here to discuss the present March on Washington commemoration engagements today. And the floor is yours, Mayor.
Today, we are witnessing what's happened in Jacksonville. We've got laws in the books, policies, etc. What can this administration do to quell the hate that is on the rise that the FBI has quantified?
I would say this, The administration has, since day one, since the president signed his first executive order on making sure that everything we've done is focused on equity in this administration, and all of his work since then, including obviously another executive order signed on the anniversary of Bloody Sunday to make sure that the sacred right to the franchise is protected. It is sacrosanct in everything this administration does. Obviously, there's a full investigation going on in Jacksonville right now. We're going to let law enforcement authorities do their job. But everything in this administration is focused on making sure that we try to appeal to the better angels against, it seems, a rising tide of not only racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, violent attacks against our LGBT, our brothers and sisters, and even significant crimes against our AA and HPI community. That's why it's so important that we remain vigilant every single day from all aspects of the administration, a whole of government approach, recognizing that there's work yet to be done. It's important to note that while we're not where we want to be, we're certainly not where we used to be. The progress that has been made, not only in the Biden-Harris administration, which has had a number of historic firsts, I might add, but over the last 60 years, this country has come a long way. And we have to, I believe, people of goodwill have to lean in to that progress, but realize that we are on the front line against a rising tide of a lot of isms. His actions last month in working to establish the monuments. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that trying to rewrite American history is not only wrong, but it also encourages our children and those among us not to lean in to the beautiful and also painful past of what our history looks like, and encouraging people to move forward together.